have you ever really thought about how a simple idea, a spark of curiosity, eventually becomes a published scientific fact that we all trust? Well, it's a whole journey. And like any good journey, you need a map, but you also need a moral compass. Today, we're talking about that compass, research ethics.
So, what is it that separates just good research from truly great research? It's not just about having a brilliant idea. It's something much deeper, much more fundamental. It's this unwavering commitment to integrity, right from that first question all the way to the final publication. And this quote, it just nails it. Ethics is about what should be done. Moral philosophy is why it should be done. See, it's pretty easy to follow a list of rules, that's the what, but to be a truly ethical researcher, you have to get the why behind those rules, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, with the absolute foundation of any credible work, research integrity. Before you even collect a single piece of data, this is the bedrock that makes sure the entire project is trustworthy.
You can think of research integrity as a kind of promise. It's a promise to be honest, to be accurate, and to be objective. This is the promise that lets other scientists build on what you've done, and it's why society can actually trust the results. Without it, the whole structure of science starts to get pretty shaky.
So this brings us right back to that quote. On one side, you've got ethics. These are the practical rules of the road, right? Be honest, be fair. But on the other side, you have moral philosophy, which asks the much bigger question: why is honesty even essential for science to move forward? The really great researchers, they live in both of these worlds.
And really, all research is supported by these three pillars. Ethics, that's our moral compass. Epistemology is all about how we know what we know, like, are our methods actually valid? And then you have ontology, which is about what we can even know, what's real and what can be studied. If any one of these pillars is weak, the whole building can come crashing down.
All right, so once you have that solid ethical foundation, we can move on to the next big phase, designing the actual research blueprint. This is where a cool, abstract idea starts to become a real, concrete plan.
A great research question doesn't just pop out of nowhere. It has to be refined. You start with something really broad, like blockchain scalability. Then you narrow it down, step by step, getting more and more specific until, bam, you have a precise, measurable problem. This whole process, it's not just some academic exercise. It's what makes the research actually doable.
Now, once you have your question, you've got to test it honestly. And you'll see tools like this, the z-test formula, and they might look super complex, but really, they all serve a simple ethical purpose: to figure out if your results are actually meaningful or if they're just a random fluke. It's a huge part of intellectual honesty, making sure you're not fooling yourself or anybody else.
Okay, you've got a solid plan. The real work begins. But this is also where things can get tricky. This is the ethical minefield, where all the pressures and temptations can pop up and derail even the most well-intentioned research.
Let's be crystal clear about two of the absolute worst offenses here. First, fabrication. That's just inventing data out of thin air. And then there's falsification, which is taking real data and twisting it to fit the story you want to tell. So one is creating a lie from scratch, the other is distorting the truth, and both are a complete betrayal of what it means to be a researcher. And then you have this more subtle thing called salami slicing. This is when a researcher takes one good, solid study and just carves it up into a bunch of tiny little papers. Why? To boost their publication count. It might seem kind of harmless, but it clogs up the scientific record with repetitive junk and makes it way harder for other people to see the big picture.
So why on earth does this stuff happen? Well, it's rarely because one person is just evil. It's usually about systemic pressure. This publish or perish culture creates this immense stress to just pump out results. And when you combine that with a lack of ethics training and a system that often rewards the number of papers over their quality, well, you've got a perfect storm for things to go wrong.
And speaking of pressure, one of the biggest, most common sources of conflict is authorship. Just deciding who gets credit for the work is a massive ethical challenge. So let's break down how it's actually supposed to work.
Okay, there is a huge difference between being an author and being a contributor. An author, they've made a significant intellectual contribution and they take full responsibility for the entire paper's integrity. A contributor, on the other hand, helps with a specific task, but they don't carry that full weight of accountability. It's a really key distinction.
So let's look at a classic case study. Imagine a postdoctoral researcher does all the crucial statistical analysis for a paper. The work that actually uncovers the main findings. But they're left off the author list. The lead researcher just calls it technical support.
So, what do you think? Is that fair, or is that a serious ethical violation?
So what's the verdict here? Excluding them is a clear ethical breach, period. Critical analysis is a core intellectual contribution. It's not just technical support. And this is exactly why the best solution is to be proactive. Authorship, who gets credit for what, that needs to be discussed and agreed upon by the whole team before the project even kicks off.
We've made it. We are now at the final stop on our journey, publishing. After all that hard work, the goal is to share it with the world. But guess what? Even this very last step is packed with ethical choices, starting with where you decide to publish. So right away, you're going to be hit with this dizzying array of metrics. Impact factor, site score, all this stuff. They all try to measure a journal's influence, but they do it in slightly different ways. And look, while they can be useful, just relying on them alone can be a real ethical trap. It can lead researchers to just chase prestige instead of focusing on producing the best possible science. And you have to be so careful, because there is a very real dark side to publishing: predatory journals. These journals literally prey on researchers' need to get published. They'll take your money for a publication fee, but they offer no real peer review or quality control in return. It's a surefire way to damage your credibility. So how do you avoid these traps? One of the absolute best tools you have is the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. You can think of it as a whitelist of legitimate, high-quality publications. If a journal is listed in the DOAJ, you can feel confident that it's been vetted for good ethical practices. Honestly, it should be an essential bookmark for any researcher today. And all of this brings us to one last crucial question. After seeing all the pressures, all the pitfalls, is research integrity a personal choice, or is it a systemic responsibility? In other words, does the burden fall entirely on the individual researcher to always do the right thing, or should institutions and publishers build a better system that actually rewards it? Now that is the question we should all be thinking about.